Welcome back to Screen Lab, where we continue to give anything and everything about film and television amidst the global crisis. Today, we will be counting down our picks on top 10 meme-worthy movies that perfectly describes how 2020 is going.
Beneath this mask there is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof.
10. Contagion. If you are not aware, there are a lot of movies, both new and old, that closely resemble the state our world is in.
People can be contagious without even having symptoms.
Especially on dealing with an outbreak like coronavirus. 9 years before coronavirus hit every possible nation across the globe, Contagion somehow predicted this health threat. The film follows the life of Mitch Emhoff, played by Matt Damon, and Gwyneth Paltrow as his wife. The story picks up when Emhoff sits in a hospital talking to an epidemic intelligence officer investigating the spread of a mysterious virus. Emhoff's wife was one of the first people to catch the virus and die.
What are you talking about? What happened to her?
After the initial investigation, Emhoff learned that it seems that the virus may have passed between his wife and someone she saw during a layover in Chicago. Sounds familiar, huh?
We're isolating the sick and quarantining those who we believe were exposed.
Contagion gave a picture of how a virus can take over a society. Well, based on personal experience, this is already a fact. And just like this scary sickness floating around, no one has an idea what's coming next. Even though Contagion raised some eyebrows almost a decade ago, the storyline now proves that this film has a life imitates art imitates life resonance and has grown with each passing day of the pandemic.
Clearly, we're not lucky.
9. Equilibrium. This film has already proven that it is more than just a clone of The Matrix. Equilibrium depicts the reality of the government and the life of citizens that are not granted with 100% freedom, dealing with mass surveillance every day of their lives. The film follows John Preston, an enforcement officer in Libya, a totalitarian city-state in the year 2072. Feelings and artistic expression are outlawed in Libya, and in order to suppress their emotions, citizens take daily injections of drugs. Well, the storyline on drug use is not news for everybody. It has been a reality for several years, not just in 2020. The story develops when Preston accidentally misses his drug dose, and he begins to experience emotions, which makes him question his morality and moderates his actions while attempting to remain undetected by the suspicious society in which he lives. The government spreads several propaganda messages to keep the power on their hands and make sure that the citizens have nothing to do but follow. And the same in real life. Offenders also face consequences. Equilibrium is such a powerful film, showing how the government can keep their nation silent despite all of the negative effects of their decisions, balancing it on how the citizens can start a revolution when they start to realize the oppression they are experiencing. Equilibrium will always be a timely film as long as government oppression is a reality.
It is our obedience to it.
8. The Hate You Give. The relevance this film has to current events is astounding. Recently, things have been extra stressful for some. Aside from staying safe and healthy while dealing with the virus, people are getting fed up and frustrated following the acts of police brutality, racism, systemic oppression, and the likes. This fairly recent film, based on a book with the same title, follows the story of Star Carter, an American girl who lives in a black neighborhood. Carter was the only witness to a fatal police shooting of her close friend. The film is straightforward in dealing with race and racism. It also gives a variety of perspectives on police brutality in society. Black slavery has been a part of American history for the longest time, and until now, people are fighting for their rights. The Hate You Give storyline can be described as almost similar to the death of George Floyd that sparked the #Black Lives Matter campaign and brought people back to the streets despite the threat of coronavirus. 7. Get Out. Just like The Hate U Give, Get Out also deals with the issue of racism. Jordan Peele's 2017 masterpiece, Get Out, offered a lifeline to the dying horror genre. The film unapologetically confronted awkward issues surrounding racism and interracial relationships in a refreshing and well-executed way. You will not see the usual ghosts and supernatural elements across the film, but it will give you an experience of the horror from the standard society enforces, which is way scarier. Get Out follows the story of a black man who will be meeting the family of her white girlfriend for the first time. Throughout the film, Peele plays with the theme of cultural appropriation, which later emerges to the idea of white supremacists hunt black people to steal their physical attributes. They trap African Americans in their own little community, letting them serve as their house slaves and forcing them into a state of submission so they can simply survive and exist. There is even a literal hunt that viewers might interpret as the reality that African Americans are often hunted by white supremacists in the street. Get Out is both entertaining and eye-opening.
Oh, no.
6. Lighthouse. The Lighthouse deals with the theme of paranoia, making you second-guess living in a small space with another human being. This psychological thriller film starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson as two lighthouse keepers who start to lose their sanity when a storm forces them to stay on the remote island where they are stationed. The setting was deserted, the chance of survival is minimal, and the only thing these two have to get through the day is booze. The Lighthouse was shot in black and white, with a nearly square aspect ratio, which was another element of the film that reinforces the feeling of anxiety. If you look closer, the time has lost all sense of meaning. Everything you plan to do is off limits, and you are more paranoid than you've ever been. We are all living inside the lighthouse, trying to survive every single day until things get back to normal.
How long have we been on this rock?
5. Carriers. More than a decade since its theatrical release, Carriers resurfaces because of its relevance to today's health crisis. An infectious virus has spread worldwide, and it already started to kill most of the population. With the aim to survive and eventually start a new life, two brothers and their girlfriends decided to move to a secluded beach motel. The crew continuously seeks refuge after one of them catches the virus. The movie's survivors are traversing the bare desert after the viral pandemic has swept the population. This post-apocalyptic film depicts an insanely infectious virus, so much so that the protagonists constantly wear masks and are armed with bleach and scrubs in the wasteland they are in. One can only imagine that they hoarded all this stuff beforehand. This is a must-see film because you can relate to the very accurate predictions of the future, which is today. It's not your ordinary survival film, like the usual monsters or aliens attacking humanity and destroying Earth. Rather, it focuses on how humans become their own feared monsters for the sake of survival. The film was also consistent on the theme up until the ending. It gives the viewers the feeling of a never-ending quest for survival. It gives you something to think about. What will you do if your loved one gets affected by this virus, and you are the only person alive? Whilst the movie takes it a bit over the top with all the sanitizing equipment, it's still important to maintain a good level of hygiene during this period.
It's what we decided.
I'm dying, Danny! I don't give a fuck about the rules.
4. Richard Jewell. Recently, the world was shocked by news and several videos and photos across social media capturing a huge explosion in Beirut, Lebanon. It was a very unprecedented situation. If you browse the internet, it was a normal day in the city and most people are at the comfort of their homes. Investigation is still ongoing for the cause of this sudden explosion. There are tons of films about bombing and sudden explosions, But Richard Jewell is somehow similar because of the unexpected situation and dealt with a controversial investigation and coverage about a chaos. Richard Jewell is an American biographical drama film released late last year, directed and produced by Clint Eastwood. The film centers around the life of Richard Jewell, security guard during the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia. Jewell found a suspicious package, which was eventually identified as a bomb. He alerted the authorities and saved hundreds of possible casualties to evacuate before the bomb exploded, only to later be wrongly accused of having placed the device himself. Aside from the storyline that centers on a historical explosion, the film also shows how the media and the government can manipulate the viewer's opinions about certain investigations and a variety of situations, which is somehow apparent these days, but in a different setting. Richard Jewell gives the audience a glance of how the media works and the justice system. So far so good? Wait and see for our top pick. This film might check all the things that could perfectly describe how 2020 is going.
Have you dummies done the math yet?
3. Into the Wild. When you talk about isolation, social distancing, or dropping your usual routine, Into the Wild is the film for you. This movie is adapted from John Krakauer's non-fiction book of the same name about Christopher McCandless. McCandless turns his back on his wealthy family and college degree. He also decides to get rid of his earthly possessions and attempts to survive on the land and his wits by choosing to start his journey by hiking from North America to Alaska. Along the way, McCandless meets people and is given a chance to settle down in a certain location, but he still chooses to pursue his initial decision. The film is a constant struggle between isolating himself from society and forging intimate relationships with others. Into the Wild is definitely a film about social distancing, not just physically, but also emotionally. McCandless' movement from one place to another is his way of running away from human connections. Christopher relishes the tangible and figurative freedom he has by declaring his independence, but also realizes that happiness is only real when shared. For some viewers, his journey might seem to be an adventure, while others look at it as a cautionary tale of isolation. Overall, this film exhibits the beauty of nature as well as human nature.
What's the N stand for?
North.
2. Clue. We understand if you watch K-dramas escape your current reality, but try to occupy yourself with this South Korean disaster film that mirrors our lives during the spread of the COVID-19. Clue is about a mutated H5N1 strain with an ultra-high mortality rate spreading across the city. This film will keep you on the edge of your seats. The scenes of an entire city being quarantined with army forces moving in are enthralling. It also details the possible unrest from frustrated quarantined citizens and the potential breakdown of society. Are you this kind of citizen? Despite the bleak and horrible situation, there are still pure and heartfelt moments too. This film perfectly exhibits what every affected country has gone through. You'll see sick people actively trying to distance themselves, healthcare workers refusing to give up their posts, and people trying to prevent riots. The movie is a must-see. It is an eye-opener for everyone. Clue is a reminder that in the middle of health risks, we can still prove that humans are still rational and we can show more care towards others. If you are still wondering what is the most perfect film to describe 2020 so far, this is the one and only answer. Snatching the top spot, V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta is a dystopian thriller that has become a pop culture icon. This film reflects a fractured world torn apart by politics and a pandemic, an eerie similarity to 2020 that makes you forget the film is a work of fiction. There are tons of points pointing out that this film predicted all of this. First is the pandemic of the St. Mary's virus started across Europe and eventually affected the world, causing a politically fragile climate which if you dissect this COVID-19 era is not far different. The fictional virus on the film was biologically engineered as a weapon by a political party to gain control, and while there are suspicions that this real-life pandemic was curated inside a laboratory under the government, but those suspicions are still unconfirmed. V for Vendetta also showed how politicians used the St. Mary's virus to gain power. Aside from the pandemic, V for Vendetta also touched other societal issues that are apparent in today's world, like when peaceful protest met with a violent force, which sometimes leads to police killing innocent citizens, or the time when racism and greed to power led to the destruction of government and private properties across the world. V for Vendetta will not give you the usual hero film, but a morally doubtful and brutally honest depiction of reality. If you haven't seen this film, now is the perfect time to do so and see what's behind that iconic mask.
There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak.
We all cannot wait when the series of downfalls will end. But one thing for sure, these films already showed us the possibilities of today. What film relates to your 2020 so far? Comment them below. If you find this video interesting, you will definitely have a good time watching our other video, 8 Best Action Movies of All Time. Subscribe to Screen Lab and click the notification button for all the latest and most relevant updates on your favorite films and TV shows. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.